Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Divine Connections. Hello, hello. So glad to see all of you. I am your host, Katrina Deal-McCall. Charlene is out for another week, but we can't wait till she comes back. But in the meantime, we do have a special guest co-host joining us today, my divine sister, Lisa Martin. Welcome, Lisa. Lisa. Hey, nice to see you, sir. Nice to see you. So, Lisa, tell everyone a little bit about who you are, and then go ahead and introduce our guests.
Okay, like Katrina said, I am today the guest co-host of Divine Connections. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Lisa Martin, domestic violence survivor, poet, and advocate. Today, we are blessed and excited to have Miss Shondale Wilhite with us. She is also a survivor of domestic violence. And Shondale, could you please tell us a little bit about you today?
Absolutely. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on your show today. I am so excited. And I am Shondale Wilhite, and I serve survivors of sexual and domestic abuse, transforming their shame to shine. I
Yes.
have two publications. So I just released and launched my second publication, which is Shine, Taking Back Control After Domestic Abuse. And I also speak, and I have a podcast, Shine with Shondale, that you can now catch on demand on any platform that you listen to your podcast on, the Intentional Talk Radio Network, Spotify, Pandora, Stitcher, and whatever yours is.
Wow.
So I want to first off just start at the beginning of my story. I grew up in a household of abuse. So I considered this normal behavior. And so with little girls, their father is the first line of what they view a man of. And my dad, in this case, I feel like taught me what relationships look like. He shaped my opinion of what men were and, what is supposed to happen when you're in relationships. Unfortunately, it was not a very good example of what a man is. And so all my life, I dealt with that type of a man. Starting at, I guess it was 11 years old, I was just like, I guess I wasn't being fulfilled emotionally. You know how you want to feel like someone loves you. You want somebody to hug you and tell you they love you and give you kisses and stuff like that. And so I didn't necessarily get that. My mom was like hard, she wasn't a very affectionate person. I did see my dad and later was introduced to my biological dad. So immediately I had an identity crisis. I was introduced to him at 9 years old. So I had these two men in my life, right? But they weren't affectionate. They would, pick me up on the weekend, how that went. And, I remember going to McDonald's a lot with my stepdad and that kind of thing. And then once I got introduced to my dad, we went on a lot of family vacations because he was working at American Airlines at that time. But even with that, at 11, I was still looking for that emotional affection. And I got my first boyfriend, right, at 11 years old. He was in junior high and I was in elementary. And I was like one of those girls, you know how you have those girls that look too old. They look like they older than what they really are. So I was one of those kind of girls that look older, where a lot more guys were looking at me because I had hips and, just a little bit of breast. I don't have much breast now, but a little bit. And so anyway, I ended up having sex with this guy at 11 years old. And I believe that's where a lot of my abuse came in, as far as being sexually abused, even though I consented to it. That was the thing that a lot of the girls my age were doing. And in my mindset, when you have a boyfriend, that's what you do. You have sex with them, because nobody ever sit down with me and, talk to me about sex and the birds and the bees and all that kind of stuff. So what I learned about it, I learned basically on my own. And so after that first sexual encounter, it was just like I ran home, got in the shower, and I had blood in my underclothes. And so I didn't tell my mom, of course, because it was just like, well, what's going on? What happened with you? And even though I was already into womanhood, I could say, hey, this is my cycle, but I was just scared to tell her because of what just happened. And so that kept happening continuously. And it was happening with older guys, older men, because what I viewed as someone loving me was having sex with me. And so I had this warped sense of what love is, right? And what love was at the time. And so I was doing all of these things, and this made me very, very promiscuous. And so I was always having sex because I felt like if I'm having sex, they love me. I'm loved. People love me, And that is what I thought about it until, things start happening where there was like this anal sex that started happening and all of these other different things that, me as a young girl, I just wasn't ready for. So when I got to high school, I met my daughter's dad. And this guy was the first guy that ever put his hands on me. We were never really in a relationship, but we were having sex. And so I had my daughter with him. And after that whole encounter, it was just like this thing that went on with my mom. He was disrespectful to my mom and everything. So it was a mess. But once I got to my senior year in high school, because I had my daughter right at the beginning of my senior year. And so at school, I met this guy who I consider was the love of my life. And I think what connected us is he also had a child who was at that time 2 years old, being a senior in high school. And so we got together, we dated, and we were together for 7 years, off and on, 7 years. And initially, I didn't recognize any signs. I didn't even know what domestic violence was, any of that. You know what I'm saying? I just think I'm in love. This is the love of my life, And being in that relationship with him, he and I we had a son together. We have a son together. And I can't even remember the first time he put his hands on me. I can't even remember. What I do remember is once we graduated high school, we moved in together and we were arguing about something. I have no idea what it was about. And he got so mad that he threw a television.
Wow.
And I think that for me, what I can remember, seeing that side of him. And so we were, of course, early on in this thing because we had lived in a few apartments together. And, there were arguments, there was, cheating, there was, physical abuse, emotional, verbal. And because I grew up, right, in this type of environment, I was a fighter. So if you hit me, I'm gonna hit you back.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's what it was supposed to look like. So as far as I was concerned, I was right on point with
Right.
what relationships was supposed to look like, you know? And this went on forever, and it just started getting, it was just toxic. I can't even say started. It was just toxic for me. And I realized that, you know what? I don't like this love. I don't like this love. So I just, it was like I couldn't even pull myself away from this kind of love. I couldn't even pull myself away from this person because I was so trauma bonded to him.
Yes.
And when you're in that state, it's just like no matter what he does, he can do whatever. You're going to forgive him for whatever it is that he does. And you're going to miss him, and you're going to still love him, and you're going to still want him in your life. Right. And I couldn't understand that at all. I couldn't understand it. And it had gotten so bad. You know, I would have black eyes. I have all these scars all over my body that of course have healed, but I still see the scars.
Right.
And where, you know, he's dragged me on the concrete, you know, just poured beer over my hair and all kinds of stuff, knocking me into walls, you name it, you know. And so I've even been in and out of jail, got a record, criminal record, where when I fought back, because like I said, I was a fighter too. And, you know, I started using weapons.
Right.
So when I fought back, I got a felony assault charge with a deadly weapon. That was on my record. And you know what happens when you get a record like that? You can't find a place to live. It's hard to get a job, all of this stuff. You know what I'm saying? And so I had to end up going to stress and anger management classes and being put on probation. Oh my God.
Wow.
Oh my God. And so I was just like, if I don't do something, because I got to a point where I started plotting on him. I started plotting how I could get rid of him, literally kill him.
Wow.
And when it gets to that point, it is so over beyond time to go.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so I can remember falling down on my knees and praying to God saying, help me.
Yes.
God.
Help me. Because I can't do this. I didn't know anything to do. I didn't have resources. I didn't know about resources. Like I said, I didn't even know what domestic violence was. Never heard of the term ever. So I had to pretty much pick myself up.
Yes.
You know, I had to pick myself up. And the only thing that I knew to do was go to church. That's all I knew to do. You know, and so I started going to church. I started allowing the word of God to minister to me. And I just started feeling good because I needed something to make me feel good about myself, because he was always telling me, oh, you're not this and you're not that, or, you know, whatever. And of course, with me having low self-esteem, I was believing everything that he told me that I was, you know? And so I think that in that moment, I was actually able to pull away from him because we had gotten into this fight, and the abuse had gotten so bad that it transferred to my son.
Mm.
And in that moment is when that plotting started. It was like, you can do whatever you want to do to me, but you better not touch my kids,
Right.
even though it was his, you
Mhm.
know. And so when all of this occurred, I was just like, how can I get out of here? How can I move? Because the place was mine.
Mm.
Mm. Mm.
Mm.
Mm.
Yes.
The place was mine.
Yes. Yes.
And at the time I was on Section 8 housing.
Mm.
I called the housing authority and I was like, look, it's dangerous for me and my children here. I got to get out of this place. I kind of lied a little bit, but in my mind, I felt like, you know, I wasn't lying because my life was being threatened.
Yes. Most definitely.
You know, I was like, I hear gunshots all the time and everything. I was just doing everything I can imagine. I was telling them like, hey, get me out from over here. And
Mm.
immediately, you know, I was able to relocate. And it wasn't long after that, and this was my way, I felt like God rescued me, was by removing him, and he went to prison for something that wasn't even pertaining to me in
Mm.
our situation.
Mhm.
But he stayed gone for quite some time. And so when I got to those phases where I wanted to call him, I wanted to reach out to him, oh, I miss him and all of this, I couldn't.
That's
Mhm.
good.
Mm.
Good.
I couldn't,
Good.
you know?
Mm.
And so it was just like I was trying to pick my life up and start somewhere, you know? And so I started traveling more with my dad because I felt like I needed to get to know who my dad was.
Mhm.
Okay. Mhm.
And so we started traveling. I spent a lot more time with him, but because I wasn't really doing work on me, when I dated again, guess what?
Mm.
I
And
met the same kind of guy.
Mhm.
yes.
Mm.
And that was like the cycle with me
Mhm.
over and over and over again. And even though it wasn't all physical, it was emotional, you know, psychological, all kinds of abuse that was going on with each person.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it wasn't up until just a few years ago that I had to take a look at my life
Mm.
and say, what is happening? Why? I started really asking those questions like, why am I attracting the same kind of person? What's
Mm.
happening with me that this is going on? You know, and I often tell this story like when I wrote my first book was supposed to be about male bashing
Mm.
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 because I was sick of men. I was
Yeah.
sick of them,
Mm.
you know. And I went to this seminar. It was over the weekend that was here in Dallas. And they were like, well, if you're here to write these fictitious books, then we can't help you. I'm like, what?
Mhm.
You gotta
Right.
be kidding me.
Mm.
This is the book I'm writing.
Right.
And so that Friday night, you know, the guy that was presenting the information, he was like, hey, you know, these are books that can be marketed, that can tell a story, that are about your business and that kind of thing. And so I was just like perplexed going home, like now what I'm gonna do.
Right. Right.
But it was like I went home and like the story in the Bible about Joseph when he had this dream
Yes.
that came to him. And it was just like God and put this vision inside of me and said, you're
Mm.
going to tell your story of abuse.
Jesus.
Yes.
And that's just what I did. I told my story about my life as a victim of domestic violence and how I overcame it,
Mhm.
or on the road to overcoming,
Mhm.
because to me, it's a daily journey.
Amen.
when you have been subjected to this type of abuse all of your life, it is so hard to turn all of that around. It's so hard to unlearn all of that,
Yes.
and become this totally transformed individual
Yes. Yes.
to where you're living this healthy life. It's like, what is healthy?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
What does that mean?
Right.
Because I had no clue. I thought I was living a healthy life. Like, what is healthy life?
Right.
And so once I wrote this book, because there was so much trauma that happened to me, because I was raped in my own home. I was molested by my brother as an adult. I had been inappropriately touched by an educator when I was just in junior high school. So when people talk about these stories with the teachers and the students, I'm like, that's old stuff, child. That happened to me. And at the time I didn't think anything was wrong with it because I liked him. He was cute, he was fun, and he was fresh out of college, drove a nice car. All the girls was hawking over him, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so I didn't think anything was wrong with it. Now we didn't have sex, but he was touching me inappropriately,
Right.
And so it was like that happened to me so often. And I just didn't know how to shape that or get away from it. And when it was happening then, my mom ended up buying a house in a new location. And I just felt like, again, that was God's way of removing me from all of that, because all of that stuff was happening right in my apartment complex.
Wow.
It's so many guys that were right there in that complex and in that vicinity that went to prison for just that, messing with little girls. It's incredible. Because when I hear those stories right today, I'm like, I'm not surprised.
Wow.
I'm not surprised at all. And so anyway, when I got to this point of writing my book, it was so much therapy for me. So much therapy for me. And, I had to end up going into counseling when writing this, because it took me back to all of those dark places.
Right.
I had counseling before, because when I got raped in my home by a stranger, I still don't know what this person looks like today, because I woke to a pillow over my head in the middle of the night. And I got counseling, I got therapy rather, for this, as I was just reliving all of these dark moments, writing my book. And oh my God, I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about myself, and why I didn't feel anything at the time when, like, this educator or all these older men were abusing me, sexually abusing me. And because I was like, well, I consented to it, but so I must be I must be at fault, it must be my fault. But when I realized the laws of the land,
Yes. Yes.
it's a crime.
Yes. Yes.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so that's how I was able to free myself of holding that shame and blame to myself.
Yes.
And when I told my story, and that's how, when people, it's like women are always the victim, that they're going to be victim shamed and everything, because somebody's going to always, you think about this R. Kelly thing. Well, why did they do this? Well, why did they parents, and why, and why, and why? Okay, why do we have to always blame the victim
Yes.
in these situations? Why aren't we blaming the person that actually committed the crimes?
Yes. So true.
You know what I'm saying?
So
And as
true.
much of a big R. Kelly fan as I was, I love R. Kelly music, but now it makes sense.
Right. Mhm.
It makes sense because as we heard in some of the, cases and the stories and this, that, he has a problem himself.
Right. Right.
And that's why the world needs to heal.
Amen.
Heal.
Yes.
So once I wrote the reality behind the illusion, defeating giants of sexual and domestic abuse, that was the first story, the first book that told my story. And Shine is, okay, now that I'm out of this abusive relationship, what on earth am I supposed to do? Because I'm a mess right now. So based on my experiences, I created the acronym SHINE, which means to speak out, to help yourself, ignite your fire, never look back, and evolve.
Amen. Amen.
But it's a process.
Yes, it is, sister. Yes, it is.
It's a process.
Yes, ma'am.
This stuff doesn't happen overnight. When I was in the relationship with my son's dad, that was over 20 years ago. So I came out 20 years and told my story. And so you better not ask me why I wait 20 years and to tell my story, because you might get told.
Right.
Right.
It's a process. It's a process.
process. And so it took that long for me to realize, oh my God, I have a problem. I have a problem that I need to deal with directly myself.
Yes.
And that's how we help ourselves.
Yes. Yes.
Because I was always like, you the cause of why this and that happened, and you the cause that I did this, and you the cause, and you, and you, and you. I was always pointing the finger at everybody else, but never taking a look at Shondale. Never. This stuff is deeply rooted. And if you don't go back to the root of it,
yes,
these things, I promise you, are going to haunt you later on.
Amen.
yes.
They're going to haunt you. They're going to come back and they're going to haunt you. And so I just chose, because everything is a choice.
Yes, it is.
I chose to be a better person and not a bitter person, because I was so angry. Oh my God. I was so angry at the world. And I just didn't like that person. I didn't like her. And so I had to do the work. And when I say do the work, I had to start accepting things that had happened in my life. I had to start accepting, the blame of, well, I stayed in this relationship. I could have left long time ago. I just didn't know how. I thought this was the way relationships were supposed to be. So first of all, I had to forgive myself.
Yes, that's the key. That's the key.
I had to forgive myself. You know what? I'm sorry, Shondale. I'm sorry. Look at yourself in the mirror, and it was the oddest thing ever. I'm sorry for having to deal with this for so long, for taking my children through this, to create another generation of domestic violence, because I still see it right today. And that was the reason why I decided I wanted to break the cycle, open up my mouth and speak out about it. And I didn't care who didn't like it.
Right.
Because this is part of my healing. You chose to deal with your mess the way you dealt with yours, and this is how I'm going to deal with mine, like it or not.
Yes, yes. So I want to ask too, now that you're on a road of overcoming this? Because like you said and mentioned, and I just want all the women or men who are in a situation or just getting out of a situation, it's a process.
Yes.
It doesn't happen overnight. You said some really key points that you have to start at the root. Starting at the root where it comes from, but also forgiving yourself.
Yeah.
And until you forgive yourself, you're not going to be able to move forward.
Yeah.
So in this season right now of moving forward, what type of things are you doing to help you move you forward?
You know, for me, it's just a daily process of self-development. What I do for myself, I get up and I just sit in silence. When you have chaos in your life for so long, that's what you get used to, the noise.
Yes.
Oh, I just like my peace now.
Amen.
That's good.
I sit in silence, and then I listen to all these motivational speakers. I love Les Brown.
Yeah.
I like to listen to Sarah Jakes Roberts. I listen to her husband, Torrey, TD Jakes. I mean, all of these motivational speakers, Lisa Nichols, someone that I can truly have feel my spirit, you know, with things that are good, that are positive.
Yeah.
Lisa Nichols, I can relate to her story. She was on welfare. You know, she was getting government assistance, all that. I'm like, girl,
Right.
I feel you.
Right.
We here.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm just like, well, if she can do this, and this girl here is on Wall Street right now.
Okay. Yes, she is.
Serving folks all over the world.
Yes.
Wow.
And I'm like, if she can do it, so can I.
Man.
And so every day, you know, I'm just digging into how I can better myself. I have my goals. I write out my goals. And whatever it is it's going to take for me to accomplish my goals, I do that. So that's what I do in order for me to keep moving forward.
Yes. Yes.
You know?
That's good.
And right now, Katrina, you're in the support group that Sandra and I, she's my partner out of California, and we created the support group in order to help women that have been impacted by domestic violence. It's called Healing Support After Domestic Violence, but we still have women there that are right in the midst of their crisis.
Yes.
Right in the midst of it. And when you go through things and you learn and you overcome, then you're able to help someone else.
Amen.
That's right.
You know, and that's what I want to do. I want to be able to help other women because I know how I struggle with it. I didn't have the resources that they have today.
Yes.
You know, it was like I was doing this thing by myself on my own and talking to people that understood, but then they didn't understand.
Yes.
They were going through it too, but we're all in this thing together. Like, girl, the next time he do this, I'ma do this, and I'ma do that. And that's how I got that felony charge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I didn't have that positive person telling me, no, that is not a good idea.
Right. Right.
You know what I'm saying? But through God's grace and mercy, you know, that doesn't show up anymore.
That's good.
The only time it shows up is when I tell it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't have that problem anymore because if you pull my background, it's not going to be there. So you can just take my word for it and say, oh, but she said it went out of her own mouth, but it's not pulling up. So you can take whichever one you want to.
Right.
Because I know that when God elevates me,
come on.
I don't need a degree. I don't need your affirmation, your confirmation, or your validation.
You gotta speak that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shondale, as you were speaking, I wrote down a word that best described you to me while you were sharing your story. And I got courageous. And it was just it was yelling at me. So, you know, when you told the story about being on Section 8 and then you called the housing authority,
Yeah.
like that was huge. A lot of people are afraid to do that because they don't want to lose their benefits. Where do you think that courage came from?
You know, my mom she was always a fighter as well. I always looked up to my mom. My mom taught me to be very independent.
Yeah.
And today I tell her that was a two-headed sword because it works for me and against me.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
right.
Mhm.
And so I always think about what my mom says when I was just growing up. Be able to take care of yourself. Don't depend on nobody else to do nothing for you, not even me.
Mhm.
And so I just had to come up with all of these ways of how I could take care of myself, you know, and not have to depend on anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so sometimes it took for me to do things that were like, I felt like maybe out of my strength, but where I'm weak, God has made me strong.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Won't he do it? Won't he do it?
You know, so I love that, courageous. I love that word. So yeah, I'm going to receive all of that.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. You are that.
I have a question as well, because what we know too, to break the cycle, to be that curse breaker of the family, in this season, or just even now, you said, you know, that you didn't have that support system growing up, and you know, now you do, you're finding other ways. And we always want to think about the children who have probably witnessed things. They might know a little more than what they're leading on. So in that, what would you say to your children now, even if they're grown, and if they find themselves even in a situation like that? What would you share with them? How would you help them in that way?
You know, because I have dealt with them in that way, you know, I always told my kids, even growing up, just because this is what you see happening doesn't make it right.
Mm-hmm.
So whether or not they remember that, I don't know. But I always told them, because I knew in the back of my head what was happening was not right. And even with my own son, he just had his newborn baby. And I told him, I said, look, you have got to be the perfect example for her to know what a good man is. I said, you have to open up doors for her. You have to tell her how pretty she is. You have to give her hugs, and you have to tell her that you love her all the time, because if you don't do it,
Right.
if you don't do it,
That's good.
she's going to go look for that somewhere else.
Yes.
And even with my daughter, you know, I have to tell her sometimes, you know, watch how you talking to your babies. You know, even with myself, I still have to tell myself that when it comes to my grandchildren. And, you know, watch what you're doing, watch what they're doing, because they have so much stuff nowadays that teaches them, you know, how to pick up all of these bad habits.
Yes.
Be involved in what it is that they're doing.
Yes.
And make it to where they're able to come to you when they have situations or issues that come up, and you don't have to feel like, you know, they had to go somewhere else because they couldn't talk to me.
That's
Because
good.
that's kind of how it was with me. I couldn't talk to my mom, you know, and I often went elsewhere looking for answers, because I don't know. It was just hard communicating with my mother. Now we have a great relationship. All the things that, you know, possibly could have been discussed with me as a little girl, we talk about now.
It's a blessing.
You know what I'm saying? But yeah, you just have to stay involved, be that perfect example. But the thing about it is, if you don't know how to be that example,
Yes.
if you don't know how to have teach your daughter how to have high self-esteem, if you don't have it.
Yes.
That's
That's
right.
So
good.
that's why you have to continuously develop and grow yourself
Yes.
and
Absolutely.
figure out, hey, Google, what are healthy ways of living,
Right.
because I dealt with my coping mechanisms were drinking, alcohol. I was smoking Black and Milds. I tried weed at 12 and I dang near burnt my throat out. And so I never touched that again.
Mm.
And, having sex, those were my coping mechanisms.
Mm.
And it's like, what are healthy things to do when you're feeling some kind of way about something? You can go for a walk, you could go for a swim, you can cook,
Right.
whatever you like to do. And then I started dancing. Dancing was something else that I picked up that was very healthy. I love couple dancing. So, there are healthy ways to cope with life. Journal, write, knit something.
That's all good. That's good.
That's awesome.
You have another question, Lisa?
Actually, Shondale, you already touched on it. The relationship with your mom. That was going to be my question. Was there any healing in that from when you were a child? We do come from an age where our mothers had to be like the mom and the dad, so they had this toughness. And affection was out of the question.
Right. Right.
And I think that, even my mom was a bit upset with me once she read my book because I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't consult with anybody about what I was writing in the book. They just knew I was writing the book.
Right.
And she felt like I was, somehow blaming her or, saying that she wasn't a good mom or whatever. And when we actually had a conversation about it, because she was like, well, why would you do that?
Okay.
And so I was like, Mom, this is not about you.
Right.
It's not about you at all. I said I had to mention you being my parent because that's where I saw it.
Yes.
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 And when I started telling her, I was never told I was that, you loved me when I was a little girl. And she would just like kind of sit there like, what are you saying? Because you really have to say those words.
Right. Right.
Because as a kid, when you say and see, that's what kids know.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
So she was able to, I guess kind of get over that part of what she felt like I wronged her on, with the book and all. But like I told her, hey, this was for me. This was for my healing. This had absolutely nothing to do with you telling my story.
Yes.
I just had to acknowledge where it came from.
Yes. Yes.
Basically. Because I had to talk with a bunch of people. I even went to my dad and was like, yo, where were you at all my life? Why I didn't meet you until I was 9 years old? And he was like, well, I was always sending your mom money. I'm like, money? I never saw no money.
Wow.
So me and my dad, we've been hashing out our relationship all these years. We bump heads, but hey, we love each other. We hang out, we talk, and there are times where, and when this is also something that I had to learn, when you have adult children, you speak to your adult children as adults.
That's right. Right.
And I had to learn that with my own, because if you continue to treat them the way they were when they were 5 and 6 years old, you're going to lose them.
Yes.
That's right.
Real talk.
you're going to lose them. And so, it's, oh my God, this has just been a forever journey going on. But you know what? I can truly say I'm enjoying the ride.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's good. That's good.
I'm enjoying the ride.
So with that being said, I want to ask you, what is next for Shondale?
Shondale is in a film, hunty.
All right, sister.
I am
Yes.
in a domestic violence film.
Yes.
So it was a play 2 years ago. It's David Moore production, and it's called Scarred for Life.
Okay.
Wow.
And so we have been rehearsing this thing for months now, and we are ready to start shooting.
Okay.
So you will be seeing your girl on
Okay.
the movie screen, okay?
Yes. Bring that awareness. Bring awareness. Yes.
Absolutely. So I am
That's good.
so super excited about this. When I first walked into this thing, I was in connection with another young lady. Her name is Dr. Wanda McKinley, and she is the founder of the organization We Are Survivors, which I am also a member. And I was on a project with her because she was writing an anthology, and I was an author in her anthology. So I went to meet her, give her the money, like, her girl. I don't do Cash App. I didn't at the time, but I do now. And so she was having a meeting with David, the producer of this play. And so she introduced me as a survivor. And he looked at me and he was like, if you had the opportunity to tell your story in a play, would you? And I was like, absolutely.
Look at God.
So I just walked right into that.
Yeah.
We did that play and we knocked it out of the park. And so now he has all these people behind him that is going to get this movie out.
Amen. That's good. That's so good.
So I am so super excited to bring more awareness to domestic violence and to just be a part of something this big. Oh my God, I never imagined something like that. And that's why I say, when you have God in your back pocket, and you ain't worried about what man doing on this earth, okay?
Yeah.
You ain't worried about none of that, because he'll just start opening up those doors for you.
Yes. Man. Amen.
Amen to that. Sister.
Yes, ma'am. So I am so excited about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So welcome.
Yes.
Do you have more to add, Lisa?
No, I'm just standing in awe of you. Your story.
Thank you.
I'm telling you, you need a whole shirt with courageous, just right there on the
right. Yeah.
Amazing. It's just
thank you.
An absolute pleasure just to hear your story. I thank God for your survival. I thank God for your willingness to reach out to other women, to help them through this ordeal. It is a curse put upon us. So I thank you. I just want to just personally thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So we never want to leave the viewers without a word of encouragement. So Shondale, if you can leave a word of encouragement or just a giant nugget for our viewers.
Absolutely. I just say that if you are in a domestic violence situation, or you know of someone that is in an abusive relationship, be there for them. We already know we need to get out. We already know that, right? Be that support system for that person, and eventually they're going to see the signs for themselves. We could talk to we're blue in the face, but if you're there and they know that they have someone, then they will eventually pull themselves out of that situation and get help. And the help number that I want to leave them with is the National Domestic Violence Hotline number, which is 800-799-7222. 8233.
Yes.
And they can call that number 24/7. But be there, be a support system. And eventually, these ladies are going to get the help that they need.
Amen.
Because when these men know that they have nobody, it's worse.
Mhm.
It's worse.
Mhm.
Help them with a safety plan.
Yes.
Have a code
Yes.
when they call you or you call them. And if your code is the color red, and you just talk about everything that's red, an apple,
Mhm.
the American flag, whatever that has red and strawberries.
Yeah.
And you need to get help over there quickly.
Yes.
Have code words and help them to set up safety plans, help them to gather up their information. So if they have birth certificates, all of their important documents, that they have a place that they could leave them with you. So when they do leave, they'll have all that information because they're going to need it.
Yes.
They're going to need it. Get them a prepaid phone or something, so that they'll have everything they need when it's time to go.
So good. So good. Well, sister, I want to thank you for being so transparent and telling your story, sharing that with us, and courageous. Lisa, you had it. That is it. The big shirt, courageous.
Hey, I'm gonna go get that made. I'm about to go get it made.
Well, sister, thank you once again for spending the time. It's a big time difference. You're in Texas, we're in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yes.
So thank you truly for sharing your time with us, okay?
Bless.